is the University of Michigan.
Touchdown, Michigan!
And midcourt extra pass.
And it goes for the win! The three-pointer by Jordan Poole! Down the sideline! Peoples-Jones! Touchdown, Wolverine!
Welcome to Blue by 90, your Michigan Wolverines podcast. I'm Kalen, joined by Jack, Nate, and Ro. And today we have a special guest, Toby from the Prattle. Toby, what's up, man?
Hey, what's up, you guys? Thank you so much for having me tonight.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Absolutely.
We're glad to have you here, Toby. What have you been up to during this quarantine?
Like a lot of other people, a whole lot of nothing for the first little bit. I'm a senior in college, so we had online school for quite a bit of time. I go to Grand Valley on the west side of Michigan. Yeah. So I'm a senior, but I got one more year to go. So I did schoolwork. I've been interviewing a bunch of guys, as I'm sure you guys have seen through the podcast, and just been hanging out, just been enjoying life.
Awesome, man. I heard you just did Braylon Edwards. You just got his podcast recorded, right?
Yeah. I recorded that one this past Tuesday, and boy, it took me so long to edit. The ones where like they're bigger name guys, I take just forever, like, nitpick just everything, make sure that everything's okay. But I mean, when you're anticipating, 3,000, 4,000, maybe 5,000 people listening, you're like, crap, man, I got to do this well.
It's got to be perfect, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be perfect. Exactly.
What was one of the key takeaways that you got from the interview?
Yeah, I would say one thing that was really interesting was his decision between his junior year and his senior year to come back to school, because he had two 1,000-yard seasons prior to that. His sophomore and his junior year, he was over 1,000 yards. And he took me through his conversation with Lloyd Carr with his dad. And that was super, super interesting. All about like the pre-draft process, the draft grades and stuff, and ultimately him deciding to come back to Michigan. That was really interesting.
That is pretty interesting, because I feel like in 2020, if any receiver, especially at Michigan, had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, they're going to the NFL for sure, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know. I was shocked. I'm like, these people nowadays, they're all about getting their money now. But for him and for those guys, they wanted a Rose Bowl. They wanted a Big Ten championship. And that's kind of what, for me, I got it so excited, because I'm all about the team kind of guy. The team, as we say. Yeah, so that just made me really excited.
No, that's awesome.
One thing. That's one thing I've kind of talked about with these guys before is I think there's a lot of players who really should just decide to come back for their senior year. I think it's just better for them, and they can actually, it's a skill. They're learning this process, just like, I'm a big golfer, right? So I golf, and it's like it takes a lot of time to learn that sport. It's the same thing with these guys in college, and I think sometimes they just prematurely go to the draft, and then they're like losing time that they could have developed to become an even better player. What are your thoughts on some of the guys who left early this year?
Yeah, I mean, well, you look at a guy like DPJ, right? And I mean, you look at guys like that. But I think, to your point, it's a great point, because people are thinking about themselves, and they're thinking about how they can progress themselves. But they don't realize the coaching staff at a college, or the experience of a college, makes you grow up so much. So I think, like, for instance, a guy like Caesar, right? Caesar, he went pro, first-round pick. Love the guy. I interviewed him. He's a great, great guy. And you're just so happy for guys like that. But you look at a guy like Donovan Peoples-Jones, and you're like, man, think about him one more year in this offense. I know we said that from his freshman year to his junior year. Like, one more year, let's give him one more year. He's going to finally produce, and it never happened. But I think having just that experience, like you said, with your golf analogy, same thing. Like, one more year of hitting the range and before you're, hitting the PGA Tour or whatever you want to say there. I think that's huge. So in my opinion, the longer you stay, the better. In most people's opinion, the shorter you stay, the better. So.
Well, and I think too, these guys see, possible millions of dollars right in front of their face, right, if they leave. But there is so much value in staying. I know just from being a Michigan student athlete, you get a ton from going to the University of Michigan and having that, those connections and the network there and beyond. If the longer you stay, the more well-known you're a Wolverine for life. And, people and, whether it's the university or the MDen or somebody are inviting you back for autograph sessions. There's so much value there, I think, long term, that guys, they just see that $1 million check come or signing bonus come, and they don't see, hey, what am I going to do beyond my playing days? Which, the NFL, what do they say? We all learned it from Rashawn Gary in the thing, not for long, right, is what they call it. So I think guys have to be, mentored and taught a little better than just getting that short-term gain nowadays.
Ro, I have one thing for you in that. An interesting story that my dad told me. Obviously, I wasn't around for the Fab Five. I was born in the late 90s. But he would always tell me the story of Chris Webber walking down the street in Ann Arbor, and all he saw in the windows was his jersey. And he was making nothing off that. That's where I'm thinking, like, okay, the Fab Five, the biggest thing in college sports, they could be making more money than a lot of the NBA players. So I do understand it to a point, but Donovan Peoples-Jones or somebody like that is not up to that level. So that's where it's almost like we're getting to this name and likeness thing. So we might get to that a little bit later in this podcast. And sorry if I'm jumping ahead, but really it's more individualized, and it's not, and like these big name guys, for instance, the Chris Webbers of the world, would be able to benefit more. And I think that would be a better option, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think too with the name, image, likeness, and we can jump right into that too, is I think the University of Michigan is at a huge advantage with that coming about. If that gets passed for sure here, it's a huge brand and all that stuff. So I think it could help our recruiting coming here in the future, in the near future, because guys are going to want to come to a place that has, a gigantic fan base, and they can, work those autograph signings and things like that. So do you agree with that? How do you think it can help or hurt or change the sport, especially specifically for Michigan?
Oh, absolutely. I think for Michigan specifically, one thing that I noticed just about doing this podcast is how huge the Michigan fan base is. Like, would I have thought that sitting in front of a microphone and talking, I'd be able to grow this thing to be something like this? Absolutely not. And one of the big reasons why is because Michigan has such a massive fan base. One of my good friends is Cam Mocht, who runs the Michigan Wave, who has almost 60,000 Instagram followers, right? So I think that if you look at that, like you said, autograph signings, I would pay to see some of these guys and get their autograph. And so it's it's so big. Now, this is the one issue, right? Is what about the Iowas of the world? Mm-hmm. Is there going to be this massive competitive imbalance more than it is even now? And I can envision that. And sure, are we going to benefit? Absolutely. But I think for these teams like Iowa's or Wisconsin's or whatever, even teams right in the Big Ten, I think it's going to create a competitive imbalance in something that I don't necessarily want to see.
That's a good point. Now, when they talk about paying players in terms of image and likeness, I've read a couple things about, people saying like, are we going to get an NCAA video game back? Probably not. But for me, I love that game. I'm still playing and trying to simulate an updated Michigan roster,
There you go.
But
yeah, I agree. I love that game. That's probably the best. That's probably my favorite video game of all time, honestly. And Denard's on the cover. I mean, you got to love it, right?
Of course.
Doesn't get any better.
That's
right. Well, if you go to Saginaw, what makes you a Michigan fan? How did that whole fandom get started with you?
So I go to Grand Valley.
Or Grand Valley, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're totally fine. So that's a great question, and a question that I asked my dad from a very young age, because he didn't go to Michigan. My mom didn't go to Michigan. My grandparents didn't go to. I'm like, why the heck am I this massive Michigan fan? Like, it was beaten into me basically. We have season tickets and stuff like that. So the story goes that my grandpa would listen to the radio, and he listened to Michigan State and Michigan, and he loved Bob Ufer, the famous Michigan radio guy. So he's like, you know what? I enjoy listening to Bob Ufer more than whoever the Michigan State radio guy was. Boom, there you go. And then from there, that's all it took, man. So, but we have Bob Ufer, the late Bob Ufer, may rest in peace, to thank for the Prattle, man. I guess that's what we had to thank for that. So yeah, pretty cool story, I thought.
That's awesome. And how'd you come up with the name the Prattle?
Yeah, I didn't come up with it. I started this podcast with 3 other high school buddies. I'm from the west side over by the Holland area. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of Holland before.
I'm from Hudsonville.
Are you really? Well,
I am, yeah.
Did you go to Hudsonville High School?
I did, yeah.
Oh, dude, I can't like you, man. I'm sorry. We had this chemistry going.
What's your what high school did you go to? Holland High or Holland Christian?
I went to Zeeland East.
Okay,
I was a starting point guard for Zeeland East. I graduated in 2016, and you guys beat us in the district finals. Riley Costin was really good, and
I'm good friends with the Costins, actually, all of them.
Really?
Yeah, yep.
Dude, I'm gonna get off this call. So
I'm sorry.
Quickly change the subject. That's funny. Oh man. So I didn't come up with the name. My buddies actually, I was kind of like a late addition to the podcast. They're like, hey, do you want to buy a microphone? We're going to do this podcast. I'm like, yeah, sure. They know I like to talk, and they know I know what I'm talking about when it comes to sports. So they already had the Prattle. It basically means to talk about nothing. I don't love the name by any means because I think I talk about something. But I mean, now everybody knows me by that name, so it's harder to change. So yeah, I didn't come up with it.
That's a good point.
So how many years have you been doing it now?
So we did that in the winter of the beginning of 2018 was when we started that. And I started doing it by myself I was actually checking right before this, like almost a year ago, I interviewed Jamarick Woods, our old safety. And he was kind of my first kind of get by myself. So for a year, I've been doing it by myself about.
Nice. So how did that come about? Did they just kind of want to drop out and not really be a part of it? Or were you just like, I'm taking it more seriously than them and I kind of really want to see where I can go with this? Or how did that really happen?
Right. I didn't take it from them by any means. I had, it was like 4 of us, just like this, 4 buddies. And I mean, talking sports with your buddies, there's nothing cooler than that, in my opinion. I love doing that. But yeah, they just, life is busy. They were all graduating college. They're all about my age. One of our guys studied law, so he was going crazy with that and everything. So yeah, everybody was really busy, and it just kind of started to drop one by one. And then everybody was like, you know what, whatever. And for about a week, I'm like, whatever. I'm just going to be done with this. And I'm like, so I just shot Jamarick a message out of nowhere, and he's just like, yeah, I'll do it. I'm like, all right, we're doing it.
That's awesome.
and so, yeah, that's kind of how that went.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to shoot your shot and see who's willing to participate, right?
Exactly. That's right.
Yep. Well, just like you said, I mean, talking sports with your buddies, nothing better. So right. I'm going to put a couple of these guys out on an island and let you talk some sense into them. All right?
All right.
Jack and Nate, you guys are our Milton diehards. All right? Jack even said he's the young Pat Mahomes.
Yeah, that's
right.
Bad.
Toby didn't like that.
I didn't like that. No, I mean, come on, man. Come on.
So, Toby, please talk some sense into these guys. They're way too early with this. Like, come on.
Well, okay. They're saying that Milton should start, let alone that Milton is as good as the greatest quarterback that I've ever seen with my 2 eyes. So that's brutal. Okay, I will say Joe Milton has the physical tools of a quarterback that you'd love to see. Is he the most athletic? People think he's this athletic, like he's going to scramble for a bunch of yards. No. Dylan McCaffrey is that guy out of those 2. Does Joe Milton have the cannon for an arm? Yes. Has what I've seen from him, has it looked erratic? Yes. Do I think Dylan McCaffrey can make almost all the throws? I bet he could make 85% of the throws that Milton can, but more accurate. In my opinion, I'm more of a guy, take care of the ball, and let's not, throw 3 picks a game. And I think that Milton would be that kind of guy that could throw for 300, 350, 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and he throws an interception to lose us a game. You know what I mean?
Jameis Winston.
Sure. Yeah. Jameis Winston. Yes. Jameis Winston is a fair example, more of a fair example than a Pat Mahomes. That's for sure. So if I were to pick a quarterback, it's definitely McCaffrey, at least going into the season. But I think the most important thing is having a healthy quarterback competition. Because if there's a legitimate competition, it's going to make both of these guys better. We've seen it throughout any sport, any position. If there's a competition within teammates, it's going to make them be their best. So I think that I'd like to see McCaffrey, but if they both battled out and Milton's the starter, I trust the coaching staff. I trust Milton. I think that we're good. But if I were to say from right now, I think McCaffrey's going to start, and he should.
So to go off, definitely a healthy quarterback competition is huge. But so is having a healthy quarterback. Does that, McCaffrey's been injured a lot, right? Does that concern you at all? Or do you think that's just kind of like a thing where Matt Stafford got hurt a lot in the beginning of his career and then he's been fine ever since? Right. Is that something that kind of plays into maybe you want to see Joe Milton out there as the first team guy because he may be more durable? Or are you saying McCaffrey's just the guy that should be in there and, if he gets hurt, then we've got a good backup?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I think the way that they used McCaffrey was more of a gadget type player than a legitimate, I'm going to be a quarterback for our team last year. I think if he were to be trot out week 1 against Washington and be the starter, they're not going to be using him in the ways that they were. Is he skinny and is he a guy that I could see getting injured the way he played last year, especially? Absolutely. But I don't think that his injuries are a cause of concern and just say, okay, no, we're going to put Milton in because he's more quote unquote durable. No, I don't see that at all. But I think that having 2 guys there is important. And I think it's huge. And I think when we had, Gutierrez, when Braylon was a senior and we could just put in Chad Henne, that's pretty nice. And so if McCaffrey gets hurt, we can just put in Joe Milton. That would also be pretty nice. So I think that's a similar situation there.
Yeah, I think that this is, outside of last year, obviously, when we had 3, pretty solid quarterbacks in the quarterback room. We haven't had, a 2-headed monster like this in a long time. I was, the 2016 Michigan-Ohio State game was on ESPN there the other night. One of the worst days of all of our lives. But I was like, okay, there was stuff going around about Spate being, he had a cracked clavicle in that game, and that was why he didn't play. He didn't play well and had the interceptions. And I'm like, all right. So I went back and looked up, what was our depth chart in the QB room there? Why didn't we have a backup in? And guess who our backup was? John O'Corn. We haven't had, a real solid backup quarterback in a long time. So to Jack, to your point is, I think we put McCaffrey out there, and if he does get hurt, then we've got a great solid backup. And so that's where I'm pretty confident in the quarterback room going into 2020.
Yeah.
Hey, Jack and I were big John O'Corn fans until they actually put him in. So.
For a time, we were there. We're saying John O'Corn, let's go, and then he went in and tables turned real quick.
The rest is history. Yeah.
Whatever happens is next year. If it starts off bad, that's going to be the go-to thing. Take him out. This isn't working.
Yeah.
It's like a cycle I'm seeing every year now. But I think with Joe, right? I think you touched on that, he might not be as athletic and shifty as some people think, but I actually kind of think a little bit differently. I think he is very shifty, and he seems to me a little bit more agile than Dylan. I think people talk about Dylan being super fast, and I think they always kind of go to that specific highlight that he had against Wisconsin where he ran for, I think, a 30 or 40-yard touchdown. But to me on that play, yes, he has blazing speed, but that hole was pretty wide. And I think Joe, he does have some maybe some concerns with throwing picks, but I feel like he has such an upside. He has so much potential. And I feel like this has kind of been a quarterback that we've been waiting for, somebody who's so like, I mean, if you look at his high school tape, he's making throws like 60 yards down the field, 1 foot, and he's just like, it's like, who's like, I think he honestly does have a stronger arm than Pat Mahomes. I'm just saying that.
Whoa.
He does. Look at the tape. He's throwing 80-yard bombs, and they're just bullets, dude. I'm telling you. I know. I'm not saying that he's better than Pat Mahomes, right? We know there's a lot more that goes into, performing at the field than just how good of an arm you have. But I'm telling you, he's got that type of arm, and he's going to be able to make throws off 1 foot if he's like running out of the pocket. I'm excited for Joe. I don't know. Either way, I'm going to be happy. You're going to either have a guy who's the next Cam Newton or a guy who literally is, he has a legacy of having, his family members in the NFL. So I think either way, we're on a good track going forward.
If I was Joe Milton, I would hire you two as my
campaign manager.
I'll do it.
Going into the,
I'll do it.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because what did Joe Milton's, when he was in high school, he tried to play baseball, and his baseball coach told him, no, because you throw too hard, right? I mean, that's a pretty good story. And I
can't remember it exactly, but it was one of those things you go like, oh, that's right. Yeah, this is like classic Joe, just, as a monster arm.
No, yeah. Anyway, bro, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, no matter who wins it, the backup quarterback is always the most popular guy on campus or everyone wants to see that the grass is always greener. The backup QB can always do better than whoever's in. So, yeah. I did want to ask though, because, you kind of said you just shot Jamark Woods a message, is that kind of how you've gotten all your interviews? Is it, or is it more, do you have relationships with the university or how do you really go about that?
Sure. Yeah. So at first it was just DMs. Yeah. It was just kind of like figuring out because it takes a special person to take a flyer on somebody that has not interviewed anybody and, take their time. So I thought that was really cool. And I've kept a cool relationship with Jamark. He's a really cool guy. But since then, I've been in contact with the head of athletic communication for the basketball team. So that's how I got a lot of basketball players. And now, I have a network kind of guys. So I'll text people that I know that I've interviewed. And then, just today, I texted one of the baseball players and I got Jimmy Kerr's number. So I'm going to interview Jimmy Kerr coming up soon. Nice. So just stuff like that, for example, makes it a lot easier. And having I think it's been almost 50 now is really helpful. So I started with the DMs. Find the cool people that are down to do it, and then after that, kind of use your networking. It's very helpful.
Now there's a lot of sports out there, and obviously we're big football guys, and we talk a little bit of basketball. But you've done a really good job of branching out and interviewing a lot of guys playing all kinds of different sports.
Thank you.
Is there a sport that we definitely should be talking about that we're not?
So how much do you guys talk basketball? You guys talk basketball quite a bit?
Not a whole lot, sprinkle it in here or there. I mean, obviously with everything going on with recruiting and Christopher and Isaiah Todd, that came up, but not a whole lot. I'd say, and guys, correct me if I'm wrong, it's probably 80-20 football.
Okay.
That's accurate.
All right.
I think you're right.
That's fair. One sport that I would say is incredibly, incredibly entertaining. And I don't know if you guys watched the College World Series last year, but college baseball and this Michigan team last year, this Michigan team this year is really, really fun. I don't know if you guys like baseball. I loved baseball when I was a kid. It kind of lost its luster on me. It got really slow. And then watching the College World Series last year was just so exciting. And my favorite player last year by far was Tommy Henry, who then I got to interview, which was really cool. He's a really nice guy and a really good pitcher. So I would definitely say college baseball is a sport that you guys should check out. Your listeners also, or viewers, should check out. It's really interesting stuff.
No, yeah, I definitely tried to check out college baseball. Especially last year with that crazy run Michigan went on.
Right.
Jack, I know you were watching it too. I mean, we were talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the last time that I really followed Michigan Michigan baseball, like, and got excited about it too. Because the last time we did, so Kalen and I, we both went to Ann Arbor Pioneer, and Zach Putnam played there, and then he went to Michigan, and then they had that crazy team where Alan Oakes hit the walk-off or like the go-ahead home run against David Price when they played Vanderbilt. And that was really before last year. That was really the last time that I was like following Michigan baseball, and it's something you get really excited about and watch. So yeah, last year was, I mean, that was so cool, especially when you have a dog in the fight. Like, to be able to watch that, like, that makes it so much more fun.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Yeah. And for me, so my girlfriend played softball at Michigan too.
Sweet.
So I'm following the softball team at all times, and that is also a sport. When I listened to your interview with Cam from the Michigan Wave, he mentioned, I think, that he wanted to post more about softball because they deserve the respect. Even obviously they're a women's sport and they don't get as much coverage as the men's sport, but they're so successful and have been for such a long time that, that's they'd have a lot of people. If you would ever get the chance to interview Hutch, the coach.
Yeah.
She's unbelievable. One of the greatest women I've ever known. So, and she is funny and she's like rough on the edges, but actually if you get to know her, she's pretty awesome. So if you would ever get the chance, that'd be a good one too.
Yeah, I interviewed Haley Hoganrod, who's a starting outfielder for them, and I have a couple other girls follow me. Like Hannah Carson, who's their catcher, and Alex Stareko, who's one of their pitchers. They follow me. So at some point, I will get more softball players on. I do take pride in the fact that I kind of diversify a little bit because I know a lot of people like the football, but you get cool stories either way. So I think it's pretty cool.
For sure.
So what's your favorite story that you've heard from a Michigan athlete?
That's a good question. I've had a couple. When I was interviewing Caesar, and this is kind of how I blew up the first time. I would say last summer I was interviewing Caesar, and I was interviewing Aiden Hutchinson first, and I asked him who's the best freak athlete on the team. He said Caesar. I was shocked. I'm like, wow, offensive lineman, crazy. So then when I was interviewing Caesar, I said, what can you run in the 40? And straight face, he told me 4.3. I'm like, C's, you're like 340, 3.6. You're not running a 4.3. You might be running a 6.4. I don't know. You're not running a 4.3. And he said, you just wait for the combine. He ran like low fives, which is great for an offense. Yeah. It's awesome. I knew he wasn't going to run a 4.3. But the funny part is I have so many young people that follow me. Everybody thought he was telling the truth. They're like, yeah, he's going to run just as fast as Henry Ruggs, of course. I mean,
yeah.
So that was a really good story. That was really funny. And I interviewed a guy named Kurt Ojala recently. He pitched for the Marlins, and he told me the story of how he was just throwing a knuckleball in the bullpen, and Jim Leland came up and was just amazed by his ball. You're going to be throwing it. No, he was just messing around. I mean, I don't know if any of you guys played baseball, but I would always throw a knuckleball, just messing around. And he was just messing around, and he's like, nope, you're throwing a knuckleball. So he threw a knuckleball the rest of his career in majors. That's crazy. I mean, just stuff like that. It's pretty awesome.
All right. I wasn't sure if I wanted to ask this, but and you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but have you had any like duds of an interview that you thought were going to be good and then just like, for whatever reason, didn't work? There was no flow, or they didn't have good answers, or whatever.
And that's a great question. No, I definitely will answer that. I think that at first I stunk at interviewing. I was horrid at interviewing. So I think I look more at it like when I was bad, those were the bad interviews. But there's also those guys that you can tell just woke up from like a 5-hour nap and they just don't want to be doing this. There was a guy last summer. I won't say his name. But he had a good season. He's in the offensive skill position, so I guess you can kind of narrow it down from the guys that I've interviewed. But that was a little bit of a dud. He didn't want to do it. I could tell. But I don't have those anymore, which is really cool. It's everybody kind of wants to do them now. I guess I've got the credibility. I don't really know. I don't know how that happened. But yeah, so it's a good question. But I used to suck, and now I don't as much. So that's what I would say with that.
Try
And
to
that's the
suck
cool
less
thing,
and
too,
less
like-
every time.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
And that's the cool thing too, is you like you do have the credibility. Like you're basically like there's John Jansen and then like there's you. Like you guys are the guys that are interviewing players and talking to them, which is like the really cool thing. So I guess another question that we have is what's your favorite interview that you've done?
There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. I mentioned him earlier, Tommy Henry, recent. Loved that interview. If only for the fact that he seemed to be just a genuinely, amazingly nice guy. And those are kind of the ones that I think are the cool ones for me. Like, yeah, you can put up all these stats, whatever, but if you're a nice guy and make those kind of connections, I think that's the coolest thing for me. I also really, really enjoyed interviewing Aiden Hutchinson this past summer. He's the same way, a very nice guy. And one of those guys that, like, I don't think he does anything except think about football and work out and play football. You know those type of guys.
He was
yeah.
bred. I mean, obviously his dad.
Yeah.
He was literally born to play and think about football. So yeah, that makes sense.
And I think that he is going to have a heck of a year this year. I think you are going to see some crazy stuff. I mean, last year you saw some crazy stuff, but this year I think him and Quiddy. Oh man. Quiddy Pay, that was also a great interview. Great, interesting story about how he fled from Africa at a young age. So, yeah, I've had some really cool interviews for sure.
Yeah, Aiden Hutchinson, man, there was a couple times where we were watching games together, and he's making tackles like on the other side of the field, and it's like, wait, where did he even come from?
Exactly. He's fast, so fast.
Aiden Hutchinson's a great guy. Yeah, no, I'd love to see him play some more. Jack, what were you gonna say?
No, that's what I had. I think Ro was ready to get something going.
Sorry, Ro. Yeah,
I was just going to say, you mentioned that you think that he's going to be Aiden's going to have a heck of a year next year. Is there anybody else that you think would be, a breakout player for Michigan next season that maybe we might not see coming, or maybe he's on the verge there?
So the two that I hear a lot, one on the offensive side of the ball, I hear Giles Jackson a lot. I like that one. I don't know. I don't know if he's a guy that I necessarily see taking a huge step up. I think he's great in the return game. I think he's great with the little, end around type deals like that. But I personally like Mike Sainer still better than I like Giles Jackson. So we'll see with that one. Yeah. And then I also hear Dax Hill a lot. Obviously, makes sense. Top 5-star guy. But I'm going to go back to Dylan McCaffrey. And I know that you two don't want to hear it.
I want to hear it.
Left Joe out of there.
No. I think that there's obviously the quarterback, highest pressure position by far. I think that McCaffrey is ready. He's ready to take that step. I think he's got the arm. I think he's got the athleticism. And I think he's got a guy breathing down his back, like you guys say, with Joe Milton. And I think that motivates guys. So I think Dylan McCaffrey is my pick for breakout player next year.
Love it. You love to hear it. You know what? We might disagree with.
If he has a breakout
season,
if he has a breakout season, that's fine with me, man. I can care
we're
less
good,
as
man.
long as they win.
Yeah, that's right.
these guys will flip. They'll jump ship real quick if he has a hot start.
Oh,
next year.
dude! In 2 seconds,
Hey.
I'll be on the McCaffrey train.
Good.
Hey, I got another question though for you.
Yeah.
So I read an article on Rivals talking about how Michigan was the biggest underachiever in college football. Do you agree with that? Do you think that's an accurate assessment, or is this just sensationalized journalism?
I think it's the latter. I disagree with the fact that okay. So Ohio State, we can't beat them. That's true. We simply just cannot beat them. They are better than us. They have better coaching, better players, everything better. But are we underachieving? Are we the biggest underachieving team? No, I don't think so. I think winning 9-10 games a year is good. Is it great? Is it where we want to be? No. But are we underachieving? I don't agree with that necessarily. I think that we've talked about it throughout this interview that Michigan is a huge brand, one of the biggest brands, and they're easy to attack in that way. But I don't think that we are underachieving. I think that we just can't beat the team that's last on our schedule every year. And I think that sucks, but I don't necessarily think that means we are a massive underachieving team.
I agree 100% with you. I mean, I think there's this almost like weird ESPN take of like Michigan still can't win. Oh, and their athletes can't seem to get it done and all this kind of thing. I'm like, I don't know where this is coming from, because we're going like, we can't beat one team is really what it starts to amount to. I don't know if you guys have any perspective on that.
So I've actually got a follow-up question, kind of, because what you said, it's the last team we play every year. What would you be somebody that would like to see us play Ohio State the first game of the season, or keep it where it is? Because I'm somebody, I'd like to get that game over with, honestly. Like, not just because when we lose, but like, it's a great way to start the season. We have great weather, and it's just there's so much excitement surrounding that game. I would love to see them start the season against Ohio State, and I want to hear what you kind of have to hear about that. Say about that.
That might be the worst idea I've ever heard. I'm just kidding.
I think it's the worst. It's a bad idea because it goes against the tradition of the game, but it's good because of how it's gone. So,
yeah, I mean, sure, we're just going to lose in the first game. I mean, yeah, here's the thing that I think about that. The one thing that I've learned about Michigan sports, specifically Michigan football, is the strict importance of tradition. Like, people still talk about Tom Harmon, and he's been dead for a long time, and it's stuff like that. Or you see Desmond Howard, Anthony Carter, Charles Wood. I mean, even going to games. First of all, that video gets me goosebumps every time with James Earl Jones. Oh my goodness. But anyways, with that video, and it's all clips that are from like 1990 and before. So tradition is so big at Michigan. Does that kind of suck? Yeah, because we can't win right now, and we can't be that team, that 1997 team or whatever before. But they would never do that, and I was just joking about it being the worst idea. But it just wouldn't ever happen, And I just we would lose if it was the last game or the first game. What I mean? But I'm not saying anymore. I have confidence in us. But I'm saying we would have lost.
I love that.
Okay, well, let's go into an alternate future, we'll call it, okay? And let's just say, in this bizarro alternate future that Jim Harbaugh loses to Ohio State 2 more times and we can't win a Big Ten championship. Would you start to advocate to fire Jim Harbaugh?
So would our seasons be like 10-2, 9-3, like stuff like that, like kind of similar to what we've been having?
Exactly.
I'm always in the not fire Jim Harbaugh train. And I think part of that goes with who are you going to get in that's going to do any better than him, that's going to beat Ryan Day, now Ryan Day, formerly Urban Meyer. I mean, in my opinion, it's nobody. I interviewed Mason Cole, and I asked him the same question. I'm like, man, Harbaugh just can't get over that hump. He says, I promise you one thing. I've been in the room with him for years. Michigan cannot get a better coach for that than Jim Harbaugh. And so he was there. So I trust him. Would it suck to lose 2 more times? Do I think it's going to happen? No, I think that we will win one of these next 2 years against Ohio State. But if that were to happen, I would not be advocating for him getting fired. He might, but he probably would leave before he got fired. That would be my guess. But no, I wouldn't advocate him. What about you guys? You guys think? I'm guessing there's one of you guys that thinks he should get fired after that.
I'm with you 100%. I'm with you 100%. I think a lot of yes, we haven't been successful against Ohio State, but doesn't mean we haven't been successful. They've just been very successful. So I think there's a lot of this kind of dogmatic, like we are not perfect, therefore we should just move on. Like, I mean, come on, like that's just not reasonable. It just doesn't seem like a rational idea to me. Right.
I would agree. Okay, so I'm 100% on the not fire Jim Harbaugh train too. But if, say, we go 2 more years and we still, so now we're 0-7 against Ohio State with Harbaugh. That's a lot of games, man. So I'm not going to go ahead and say we should fire Jim Harbaugh because he is, he's not the guy or not the talented guy or whatever, not the best coach, but maybe he's not the right guy because the expectations are so high because he is Jim Harbaugh, at Michigan. He's supposed to be the Messiah here. So maybe instead of Jim Harbaugh, we go out and get somebody with, less expectations or less pressure on themselves because they're not, the great, one of the great quarterbacks in Michigan history and, coming home and that, all that mantra, so not because I don't think he can do it, but just because we've almost, put ourselves in a corner now that we all, the pressure and with the expectations when he came in, we're like, all right, we're going to win a national championship within 5 years. Now we haven't come close, and it's, we put that pressure on ourselves. So maybe bringing in, and I don't know, I have no idea who it would be, but maybe just somebody else with, not so many Michigan ties and the expectations and the pressure aren't there. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess the fear there would be that you fall into the Nebraska pitfall, right? Where you get rid of your guy when you were winning 9 games a year, and now look at Nebraska. They're struggling.
Yeah. I mean, we did it. We did the same thing with Lloyd Carr.
Yeah,
exactly.
I also feel like a lot of this kind of like dogmatic stuff doesn't help the program either. Like when everybody's constantly trashing it and saying like, oh, we can't ever get things done. Like recruits hear that, people hear that, a vibe then like takes over and then it continues on. So I think like there's a lot of stuff that honestly, as a fan base, we could also improve on. Like, man, have you ever been to Michigan Stadium? How quiet it is for 110,000 fans. I mean, like, get up, people, like, yell or something, right? Like, gosh, I mean, I hear stuff about my parents talking about when they went to games in the 70s and 80s, and they're like, man, it was so loud, blah, blah. Now it's just quiet. Everybody's just like, oh, okay, next drive. I mean, get up, do something, like, yell. I don't know, like, have more stuff at the stadium. I don't know. I'm trying to think of anything I can so we can win this game.
No, I agree with you, and I have a story about that. I can't remember what game it was, but 2 years ago, my dad and I, we went to a game. My dad has season tickets, and first drive of the game, go down, touchdown, like a 70-yard touchdown. We stand up, go crazy. The lady behind us says, "Hey, sit down." We're like, what?
After a touchdown?
70-yard touchdown, like. We're like, what? Like, this is a football game, right? And that when I heard that, I'm like, man, something's wrong here. Something's wrong here because it's more about like, oh, we're gonna go to the game and then we're gonna go out for dinner or whatever. But it's less about the result and more about the experience for a lot of these people, and that's a bummer. It's not that competitive drive anymore, I guess.
Have you had an opportunity to go to a game at a different stadium?
Yes. I've only been to Spartan Stadium, I think. Bummer. But that was when because Kirk Cousins is from Holland Christian, which is right by me. So he's a good dude, honestly. He is a good dude.
Very good dude.
Yeah. But he just made 2 really bad school choices in Holland Christian and Michigan State, but whatever. So it was a Denard Robinson and Kirk Cousins, and it was in the rain, and we lost, and it was ugly. But yeah, and it was loud, but it honestly wasn't anything compared to Michigan. Michigan State didn't wow me.
Right. No, I know Jack and I had an opportunity to go see Alabama, Tennessee down in Knoxville, and that was pretty loud. It wasn't as loud as Michigan Stadium. I would say I was more impressed that I was standing next to somebody's grandma and they were reciting the Alabama depth chart.
Wow.
Dude. Yeah. And so everybody around us was standing up. They were yelling. They were cheering. Like awesome. They were fans of their team and they weren't afraid to show it. And it wasn't like exactly what you said when you go to Michigan Stadium, man. Like every experience I've had there, it's like me and my buddy, and then whoever's around me, we're the only ones that are doing anything. And right. It's unbelievable. You're going to a game to watch a game to support your home team. If you're going to be quiet and you want to sit down, stay home.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Well, we don't want to get too down on it. I mean, you go in the student section,
I got
kids are up.
I could just
my complaints, like just coming on the show.
Okay. Well, I think we got most of our questions in here. Does anybody else have any more questions you want to ask Toby?
Well,
I see. Or go ahead, Ro.
I was just going to ask one more, and then we can get to his stuff. But I mean, easy question here. Record prediction for next season. Maybe not an easy question, but a simple question.
Yeah, right. A simple question. I mean, 10-2. You know, I think we lose one of those Penn State, Wisconsins in the beginning of the year in Ohio State. Like, might it change? It might. Might we not even have a season? We might not. Would that suck? Yes. I don't know what I would do with myself.
What about the spring? What about spring season? Are you like open to that? Do you like that idea?
Having a spring season, you said?
Yeah.
I mean, any way to get college football, I'm in for.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I think having it at a different time or changing everything up is so, like, you don't understand. Well, I mean, you guys understand, but most people don't understand how big of a business it is. A massive business. So trying to move all this stuff around, and we're going to kick baseball and all the spring sports out. It's a headache. And would it happen? And would I go to the games? Yes, but it would be really, really hard, I think.
Yeah, and so ESPN FPI just came out with their predictions for the Big Ten. They had Michigan at 7-5. How about that? So they basically losing every big game. I mean, that would mean Washington, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Penn State, and Ohio State. So
I don't see that happening.
I don't see that happening either. I really think we go in and beat Washington right away, which would be, a huge win for us on the road. We haven't won those games on the road, much.
Right.
And then I still think, we're a bit ahead of Minnesota I know Minnesota's on the rise, but I think we still beat them. And then I think we win at home. We win one of the Penn State and Wisconsin games. So, yeah, I think 10-2 is an easy answer to a simple question, right? But you're probably spot on because we're that's where we've been for the past 5 years, pretty much.
Right.
There's a lot of question marks there too, right? So hopefully that ESPN FBI just has inconclusive data or something in their algorithm. All right, Toby, we got our last segment here called 0 to 90.
All right.
We all have an opportunity to voice whatever opinion we have, positive, negative, whatever, but you only have 30 seconds. Would you like to participate?
I would. I would not like to go first, but I will participate.
Okay, that's fine. You could go last.
Alrighty.
These guys will show you how it's done, but we're going to start with Ro this week. Ro, are you ready for your 30 seconds?
I don't know. I don't have much prepared here.
I don't have anything prepared, Ro. Come on now.
We're all just riffing here.
Okay. Your 30 seconds starts now.
All right. I would say, so with the ESPN FPI is telling us that we're going to go 7-5, I think we have a better chance to go 12-0 than we have to go 7-5. So I'll say that. We haven't gone 7-5 since, the Rich Rod or Brady Hoke days. I say, with a quarterback that might put it all together, we have a good chance of going 12-0. The only problem that we all know is going down to Columbus.
Good job. You fit it all in 30 seconds. Wow.
I tried. I didn't want you cutting me off again like last time, so I tried to fit it off.
All right, Nate, are you ready?
Yeah, I think I'm good.
Okay, here you go. 30 seconds starting right now.
Okay, so we've heard a lot of talk about the G League and some of the players that we had going there. My concern is it a possibility that this somehow spills over into college football? So now players are going to decide, hey, let's go to this other league, and then somehow we're not going to have college football. I don't know, just a concern. I'm not sure if it's going to happen, but concern.
Oh, Nate's foregoing his time. All right. That's an interesting perspective. I like it. Jack, your 30 seconds starts now.
All right. So obviously we we look at Michigan basketball, we look at Michigan football, and a lot of things what we've seen with the basketball team is bringing in recruits that are not as highly rated, and they seem to develop into stars and leaders on that team, and we see some success with the basketball team. And I think that as far as football, I don't know whether it's a development on the coaching staff or maybe we don't have any leaders, but possibly we need to look into something in the development side.
Oh, man, he
damn
never
it.
got a chance to tell us what to do. Oh, man. All right, Toby. Here's your shot. Here's your shot to let us know what's up. 30 seconds starting now.
All right, so I know a lot of people are talking about Isaiah Todd leaving, not getting Josh Christopher. I think this is, in my lifetime, the best recruiting class that Michigan basketball has had. Especially, I'm looking at a guy like Hunter Dickinson down low, a more developed John Teskey when he's coming in. Zeb Jackson is a shooter, will be able to help us at the guard spot. Jace is a guy like Draymond Green that can do everything for us. And Terrence is just a bulldozer, man. I am so excited about this freshman class. People are getting down about not having Zay Todd and Josh Christopher. Screw them, man. They didn't want to come.
Dude, he was getting me hyped for basketball.
I like that. I know you got me hyped up, man.
Hey, I interviewed all those guys too, so they're all good dudes.
Had to name drop.
That's right.
Okay, that's awesome. What a great way to end the podcast. Toby, thanks for joining us. Check out Toby at the Prattle Sports Podcast on Instagram, on Apple Podcasts.
His online store, right?
And your new online store.
Hey, did you guys check me out while I was sipping through the
product placement?
It's all about product placement. Yeah, I appreciate that, Ro. Yeah, that launched today. Thank you guys for mentioning that too.
Where can people go to buy that stuff?
So right now it's in my bio.
Okay.
The link to the store, so you can just click on there. Don't feel any pressure to do that, but just something that I did, and it's been cool. So I appreciate you guys mentioning that.
Yeah, make sure to hop on there and buy about 30 of those things.
I'm getting the JT is short mug, that's for sure.
Oh, of course.
Yes, that is a fan favorite.
Love it.
Got to make sure everybody knows. Also, check us out, Blue by 90 on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. Other than that, go blue.
Go blue.
Go blue.
Go blue.
Thanks, Toby.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, feeling good, like I should. When in dark, walk around the neighborhood. Feeling blessed, never stressed. Got that sunshine on my Sunday best. Yeah, hey, every day can be a better day despite the challenge. All you gotta do is leave it better than you found it. It's gonna get difficult to stand, but hold your balance. I just say whatever, cause there is no way you're around it. Cause everyone falls down sometime, but you just gotta know it'll all be fine. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Hey, feeling good, like I should. When in dark, walk around the neighborhood. Feeling blessed, never stressed. Got that sunshine on my Sunday best. Hey, some days you wake up and nothing works, you feel surrounded. Gotta give your feet some gravity to get you grounded. Keep good things inside your ears just like the waves and sound it. And just say whatever, cause there is no way you're grounded. Everyone falls down sometime, but you just gotta know it'll all be fine. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Hey, feeling good, like I should. When in dark, walk around the neighborhood. Feeling blessed, never stressed. Got that sunshine on my Sunday best. Hey, feeling good, like I should. When in dark, walk around the best.